I find it a little surprising, to be very honest, that two poems associated with the railways in a sense are part of the class 9 ICSE English literature syllabus in treasure chest. We had the Kimble Shanks, the railway cat, and now we have the Night Mail, which is also about a train that travels from England to Scotland, from London to Glasgow in particular. So this is the last of the 5 poems, which is part of the ICSE Class 9 syllabus written by W.H. Auden, considered the most prominent and perhaps the brightest and the greatest poets of the 20th century. A British-American poet. He wrote Night Mail. Actually, the whole story about why the Night Mail was written itself is quite interesting. Now, at the time of writing this in 1935-1936, it was published in 1936, W.H. Auden was actually employed as an assistant director in the General Post Office film unit. There was a film unit which was attached to the General Post Office, and he was associated there. He was part of that unit as an assistant director. So he wrote the poem. Now, what is interesting about the poem and why it is kind of read even today is because it was written as a verse commentary, in the sense that if you see the rhyme scheme, it's set to a meter. That is, you can actually the exact length is kind of calculated and how much time it will take to say each line, right? It was written for the final minutes of a documentary film of the same title, that is The Night Mail. The Night Mail was the title of the documentary, and the poem's title is also the same, and therefore it is celebrated in very film soundtrack level. See, sound, we generally, when we go to see a movie, we kind of appreciate the camera work, we appreciate the acting, we appreciate the music, the songs, the lyrics of the song. We don't pay much attention to the sound quality, whereas the sound quality is perhaps the most important part of a film. No, I wouldn't say the most, but certainly one of the most important parts of the film, right? So the soundtrack of the Night Mail in that sense was considered pretty much of a landmark soundtrack, right? So he matched it with the rhythm of a train. The train operates with a particular rhythm, right? So the poem was also kind of matching with the rhythm of the train, right? The way it was shown in the documentary, that's the speciality of this particular poem. In fact, the rhythm of the train's wheels, the wheels of the train, you could actually calculate it with a stopwatch, and this would actually fit in with the every line of this particular poem. So there is a consistent rhyme scheme, there is a consistent meter skip pattern that follows the path of the train. So therefore it is seen as a classic example of a film soundtrack verse in English. Please remember this particular phrase. Okay, let's see what is the poem about. Now, I've written a lot of questions and answers out here, which is basically to help you understand. Subsequently, we will do reference to context questions separately as part of the test papers. But right now, the question and answers that I have written, what are the themes of the poem, what is the poem about, everything will give you an idea, will help you understand the poem better. And for any kind of unit test, you should be able to, because I'll explain the poem in great detail, every word, every line, so you should not have any issue with that. So the poem is about a train that operates at night, which is why the Night Mail. I'll talk about the title separately. The Night Mail, and it operates from England to Scotland, delivering letters. So the whole poem is emphasizing on the theme of communication, letters. It is emphasizing on the theme of connections between human beings, between a human being on this side of the border and a human being on that side of the border. That's essentially the basic premise of this poem. Okay, so you have love letters, you have informal letters, you have official letters, you have letters of condolences, right? So all kinds of letters being taken by this Night Mail, and it talks about its journey. It talks about the kind of geographical landscape that it travels through as it reaches Scotland, Glasgow. It talks about the kind of effect it has on human beings, animals, birds, on the path, on its journey through the night before it reaches in the morning, before it reaches Glasgow in the morning. Okay. What are the themes? I spoke about the theme of nature, right? I spoke about the effect on the environment, right? The theme of time, that despite all the obstacles, and this is in a sense a metaphor for life, that, there are these obstacles and hurdles that the train faces, but despite that, it ensures that it reaches on time its destination. It reaches its destination on time. I don't know why I'm talking in inversion, right? So it reaches its destination on time. So the theme of time, and the most important one, what I spoke about, the theme of communication, the theme of emotional connect with people, with other human beings. Okay. Also as a theme of progress, as a symbol of progress, because the night mail, at least at that time of the century, steam engines were seen as a symbol of progress, that you could actually go from place A to place B, of technological advancement, showcasing it to the world. So all that is also coming through in this particular poem. Should I talk about the title now or should I talk about it later? I'll basically talk about, see, mail, if you see the word mail, MAIL, it is used for a train, Frontier Mail, Chennai Mail, Amritsar Mail, right? We use the word along with trains. Mail also means post, right? So mail is a word which kind of combines, which applies both to trains as well as to the postal system, right? And the title itself evokes a sense of mystery because the word night has been associated with mail. The moment you put a word like night in the title, night is to do with darkness. There is a sense of the unknown. There is a sense of mystery. There is a sense of suspense, something which you are not aware of, right? So it evokes a sense of curiosity in you as to what is this night mail that we are talking about, right? So that's something very important. And mail obviously kind of immediately connects you to themes of communication, themes of correspondence, themes of transportation of messages and human interaction and connections, right? So in that sense, it's an invitation of sorts, an interesting and captivating invitation to kind of explore the nighttime, right? Nighttime and the significance of communication in our human lives. Okay, I hope you have understood the basic premise of the poem, and once you go through the poem, you will pretty much be clear. That much of confidence I have in myself. Okay, मैं समझा दूंगा. Interestingly, the train has been described in female terms. It has been described as a she, which is quite significant. The gender of the train has been, otherwise, when you look at a machine, strong, powerful, and this thing, the general tendency, and I'm not saying it's right, the general tendency is to kind of give it a male gender. But here, very interestingly, W.H. Auden has given it a female gender, which is quite significant. We will talk about that later on in the question and answers. Let's start with the poem. Essentially 5 stanzas, all of them of varying sizes. It's not like, each one of them has the same number of lines. This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order. You see the rhyming. Letters for the rich, letters for the poor, the shop at the corner, the girl next door. Poor, door, border, order, right? So the rhyming is very there. So it's carrying letters from across the border, right? It's talking about crossing the border and getting into Scotland from England. Scotland is to the north of England. Those of you who are not aware of the geography, just Google the map of UK. You will find Scotland on the north and England below that, right? Wales is on the left hand side. So it's bringing checks, right? And postal orders. So essentially also talking about financial transactions, and it means the same for everyone. It brings letters for the rich and letters for the poor. So in that sense, as far as the train is concerned, she treats everyone equally. It's not like, she'll bring letters only for the rich and not for the poor, or vice versa. Everyone's letters will be transported by the same train at the same time, right? Now it is crossing the border. Now crossing the border, it's of course in the literal sense crossing the border between England and Scotland. At a metaphorical level, it could also mean crossing the border to deliver letters for all kinds of people, cutting across any kind of class divide, economic divide, financial divide, religious divide. It does not matter whether you are a Christian or a Muslim, a Catholic or a Protestant, a Jew or a Christian. It does not matter. Your letters will be delivered to you in Glasgow. So that's what, so it's kind of crossing any kind of hurdles, any kind of borders of that kind, the artificial borders that we human beings create between ourselves. You know, you are Hindu, you are Muslim, you are Christian, you are Jew, you are Buddhist, right? Okay. Let's move on. Pulling up Beatock, a steady climb. Now this place is interesting. This is one of the few places which is mentioned in the poem. Now Beatock is a village in Scotland. Please mark it and you can write it. Otherwise it's there in the notes in any case. Why is it written as pulling up Beatock, a steady climb? Okay, you need to know that, right? In, at least as far as I am concerned, I always do my research to find out what is it, why is it referred to as a steady climb. Now that's because Beatock is 1016 feet above sea level. Okay, so it is at a particular height and it is the highest point of the railways in Scotland. It is the highest point of the railway line in Scotland. So you need to climb up a steep gradient, a steady climb. You need to climb up in order to reach Beatock. Now the severity and the toughness of this particular gradient you understand, like an inclined plane which you would have read in physics, is what is described in this particular line. It talks about how the steep incline makes it very tough, but even then the train is able to make it on time. Despite the steep gradient, it is able to make it on time. In fact, what I read up is that to help the trains reach their destination in Glasgow on time, when they were approaching Beatock, there used to be something called a banking locomotive. That is an engine of sort. A banking locomotive that used to be stationed there before Beatock, and that would be attached to the train to help, you know, more power to pull the train up the steep gradient, right? So to ensure the trains were on time. Otherwise, all the trains will get delayed because of the steep gradient. So they would do that to ensure that they were able to pull the train up the steep incline. So the fact that the train keeps its time makes it a very reliable mail service. So the gradient is against her. The gradient is against her. You know, it's a steep gradient, but even then she is on time. The night mail ensures that she is on time. Past cotton grass and moorland boulder, shoveling white steam over her shoulder. Now, what are these two specific words? So, moorland is basically characterized by low growing vegetation, okay, at a lower height. The cotton grass is grass that grows in wet areas, okay. The steep gradient is also a metaphor that despite whatever be the obstacles, we have to kind of overcome them to ensure that we reach our destination at the appointed hour. Okay, that's a metaphor. The literal meaning I've explained to you about Beatock. The metaphorical meaning is that we need to overcome all our obstacles. Now, subsequent to that, the visual imagery of the white steam. If you've seen old steam engines, if you've seen some of those old movies, you will find that, you know, steam engine, dhua nikal raha hai, the coal is being poured and then it keeps on this thing. Now, of course, it's all electrified, right? But earlier it used to be, and it would also create a lot of sound. That kind of a sound, you know, so it would be a very powerful kind of a force as it would go through vast fields, empty fields, but it would be creating a lot of noise. And in the night, you would see the white smoke going through out of the engine, right? So that's the kind of visual imagery that the poet is talking about, shoveling white steam over her shoulder. So it's kind of going through, so it's almost personified. Her shoulder means he has personified the engine and the train, that kind of a white smoke is being left behind, right? So that's what shoveling is, I mean, releasing, right? With a shovel, if you know a shovel, which is a tool, which is an instrument, which is equipment which is used to kind of pull and throw. So this is called a shovel, right? It's had a flat kind of a base and a long handle. Now the steam engines also convey the sense of massive power, you know, the steam that is being released, right? And the noise that it will create. And it will also, what does it do? When you're creating a lot of noise, when, for instance, if you're, let's imagine you are at the gym, right? And you are doing the cross trainer, you know, you keep doing the cross trainer. After some time, you will be kind of, kind of thing you will be doing. It shows what you're creating, you're grunting, you're snorting. It means that you're also determined to keep going at it, even though your body is extremely exhausted, right? Same is the case with the train, that it is kind of continuing to do so despite the gradient, despite the hurdles. It is very determined to kind of reach its destination on time. Okay, so subsequent to that, we talk about the snorting noisily. The noise created by the steam engine also is huge. It's snorting noisily. It means it's a very loud kind of noise. You snort means it's creating a very loud kind of noise. Otherwise, the night is extremely silent, right? A very, very silent, snorting noisily as she passes silent miles of wind-bent grass. Wind-bent grass because there's also a wind, also perhaps because of the movement of the train. So the grass is all bent, okay, because of the strong wind, and it is all silent miles. So it's like vast, empty landscape. Even otherwise, if you travel anywhere from London outside, let's say to Wales, London to Cardiff, which is the capital of Wales, is probably the most beautiful journey. I studied in Cardiff. It's about roughly 3 hours, I think. It's one of the most beautiful rural landscapes that you will find. You will find like vast landscapes, fields, green, lush green, lovely. Okay, so pretty much similar is the case with going to Scotland, which is another very beautiful part of UK. So there also you find silent miles. That is, there is no other sound except that of this night mail train. Birds turn their heads as she approaches. Now, that's second stanza before we go into that. So silent miles conveys the quiet. Wind-bent grasses is an example of visual imagery. Snorting is an example of personification, just like over her shoulder is an example of personification, that is human qualities given to the night mail. Basically, blowing wind both through, snorting means blowing wind both through the nose as well as the mouth, right? And the personification as a poetic device has been used quite a lot by the poet in order to make the train seem extremely human, okay? And its efforts, you make it relatable to the reader, right? You are able to relate and understand the effort made by the train by the poet's attempt to personify, okay? Because the poet has personified the train. Stanza 2. Now he talks about the reaction of the world around the train. The birds turn their heads as she approaches. So the birds turn, so they kind of look at the train while the train approaches and passes by. Okay, so they're surprised at their entry. They turn their heads in the sense there is a sense of curiosity. They kind of look around when the train approaches, right? Stare from bushes at her blank-faced coaches. Blank-faced, yet another example of personification. Blank-faced because all the coaches look pretty much the same, because it's a goods train in a sense. It's not a passenger train, right? So all the coaches look pretty much the same, and they have a very straight kind of expression. There's no expression in that sense. So they are all blank-faced. So stare from bushes. So from their bushes, they look at the coaches of the train. The sheepdogs cannot turn her course. Now, sheepdogs are the ones which are responsible for herding the sheep. I don't know if you are familiar. I don't know how many of you have ever traveled to a rural area. But if you travel to a rural area, you will always find that along with, say, 40 sheep, 50 sheep, a herd of sheep, you will always find 1 or 2 dogs. Now, the dogs are trained by the shepherd to kind of ensure that the sheep, none of the sheep there actually digress and go anywhere else, right? So if any sheep kind of goes somewhere else, it's a job, and the dog is trained to do that. The sheep dog is trained to ensure that the sheep sticks to the herd, right? So they are the sheep dogs. So the sheep dogs cannot turn her course. So the sheep dogs are trained to ensure that the sheep go on a particular course, but the sheep dogs cannot do that to the train. Cannot do that to the train. So the train goes with so much of power that the sheepdogs who would otherwise manage to change the course of the sheep, if they are going in a wrong direction, it would ensure that the herd of sheep goes in the right direction. It cannot do so to the train, right? So what do the sheepdogs do? They just keep sleeping with their paws crossed. Okay, they don't bother. They just keep sleeping with their paws crossed. The slumber means they sleep on with the paws crossed. In the farm she passes, no one wakes, but a jug in a bedroom gently shakes. So this is the effect because of the sound and the rumbling sound. There is a neighboring house. There the jug in the bedroom shakes because of the frequency matching between the train, and as a result of it having an effect on the jug. So in the farm she passes, no one wakes, no one is bothered. It does not kind of affect anyone's life, right? So the life on the farms is not affected by the passing of the train. And after the gradient of the first stanza, this particular stanza, as you know, talks about the fields, the natural environment, the grassy lands that the train passes by, and there is obviously vibrant use of imagery in this particular stanza. यहां तक समझ में आ गया? There are people who talk in a very even kind of tone. There are people who talk very animatedly with a lot of energy. And when you speak with a lot of energy, it also tires you out. Dawn freshens, stanza 3. Dawn freshens, her climb is done, down towards Glasgow she descends. And now, she's now beginning to descend towards Glasgow because it's morning time. Okay, she has crossed the gradient, Bitok, the fields, and now she's coming towards Glasgow. So by the time it's early morning, the train has finished her climb into Glasgow. And if you see out here, there is excessive use of the consonant D. Dawn, done, down, descends, right? There is excessive use of this. So it kind of creates an impact. It creates a particular sound impact. She's done, she's descending, So when you hear the same consonant again and again in quick succession, it kind of creates an impact on the reader. The cranes, and now the environment that is being spoken about by W.H. Auden is very different to that in the second stanza. Now it's talking about machinery. So it says that down towards Glasgow she descends, towards the steam tugs yelping, down a glade of cranes. Cranes are equipment which are used for construction or lifting machinery kind of activity, right? So it immediately conveys that Glasgow is a major hub of industrial and commercial activity. Okay, please understand that. Glade means an open area. So in an open area, there are a whole lot of cranes which are, now cranes is not referring to a bird, don't make that mistake. Cranes here refers to, just Google crane used in industry, you will be able to see the machine out there. So the poet compares the apparatus. Apparatus, again, it's something which is used in for experiments or for machinery, industrial activity, etc. And furnaces, again used in industry, to gigantic chessmen, right? As though they are big pieces on a chessboard, on an industrial chessboard, as it were. So they look like pieces in a game of chess, large and imposing in an open area, dark plain, right? Towards a field of apparatus, the furnaces set on the dark plain like gigantic chessmen. So they all look like, as though it's one big chessboard where all these different furnaces, the cranes, the apparatus, they're all put like big chess pieces. All Scotland waits for her. Who is her? The night mail. In dark glens beside pale green lots, men long for news. So it says that all of Scotland is waiting for the night mail in anticipation for the train. Glens is a narrow valley in Scotland, okay, with steep sides. This is a narrow valley beside pale green lochs. Lochs means it's a Scottish word for lake, okay, water body. Okay, so the atmosphere, as you realize, in Glasgow is very different from the plains that the train has passed through after crossing the border within Scotland. And the human element now comes to the fore because men are now being mentioned. So far we saw about the birds, the sheepdogs, right? Now we are being told about the human element, that men long for news. News as in information, communication from their near and dear ones, right? So that is stanza 3. Stanza 4 is the longest one, but it's essentially just talking about the different kinds of letters that are being carried by the night mail. Letters of thanks, letters from banks. So just read this. Letters which convey gratitude, thanksgiving. Letters from banks, that is financial news, information, that is your bank account has been credited with so and so much money. Letters of joy from girl and boy, this is love letters. Receipted bills and invitations, right? You understand, again, financial transaction or someone extending an invite for a wedding or a birthday party, whatever. To inspect new stock or to visit relations. To inspect new stock, I mean, again, official letters, or to visit relations, informal letters, invitations, and applications for situations, that is for job. And timid lovers declaration, love letters. And gossip from all the nations, right? Again, informal letters. Now, this one, letters of joy from girl and boy, could be informal, could be love letters, either of the two. Okay. News circumstantial, news financial. Circumstantial is something which is about a particular incident and depends on the situation at that particular time, which has led to that kind of a development, which is why news which is circumstantial, depending on that point in time, उस situation में क्या हुआ उसके बारे में बताने के लिए. So it means about some occurrence which would have happened at that point in time. Okay. Letters with holiday snaps to large in, okay, which are carrying photographs. Letters with faces scrawled on the margin, people have kind of doodled on the side. Letters from uncles, cousins, and aunts, okay. Letters to Scotland from the south of France. So there are no geographical boundaries. Letters are coming from other parts of the world as well. Letters of condolence to Highlands and Lowlands. Highlands and Lowlands are different regions of Scotland. Okay, there are three regions: Uplands, Lowlands, and Highlands. So that's what is being mentioned. Written on paper of every hue. Every hue means every kind of paper. The pink, the violet, the white, and the blue. So these are the four colors which are mentioned of the hue. Remember this from an MCQ point of view. The chatty, the catty, the boring, and the adoring. Okay, I've already done 20 questions on MCQs which I have put already. Okay, so please look at them after you listen to this video and go through the notes. So the chatty means someone who is kind of gossiping and chatting. Catty means slightly evil, where you are kind of saying something bad about some other person. The boring and the adoring. Adoring as in admiration. The cold and official and the heart's outpouring, where you are expressing what is there in your heart. So all kinds of letters. You see the different kinds of letters. So a good idea would be to just write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. जितने भी हैं, जितने भी मैंने count नहीं किया, 13, 14, 15, जितने भी हैं, just write different kinds of letters so that you have an idea about what all, because if you get a question, what are the kinds of letters? It should be a very boring question and a very cliched question to get, but just in case if you get like that in your unit test, you are able to answer the different kinds of letters. So please write it out. That is your assignment. Okay. I am not going to do that in my question and answers. Clever, stupid, short, and long. So some letters are clever, some are stupid, some are very short, some are very long, some are typed, some are printed and spelled all wrong. Some people have made a lot of typographical errors also. This is an easy stanza. I hope you have got it clear. Okay. Thousands are still. Now this is the fifth stanza. वो गाना है, I don't know, you may not remember. There is a singer called Pankaj Udas. During our childhood, there used to be a very famous song of his. चिट्ठी आई है, चिट्ठी आई है. It's a very nice song. चिट्ठी आई है, वतन से चिट्ठी आई है. सुनना गाना, अच्छा गाना है. बड़े दिनों के बाद हम बेवतनों को आज वतन की चिट्ठी आई है, चिट्ठी आई है, चिट्ठी आई है. Let's start. Thousands are still asleep, dreaming of terrifying monsters or of friendly tea beside the band in Cranston or Crawford. These are prominent areas in Glasgow. Okay, so what he is saying is that now he's talking about the impact of the arrival of the letters on the people in Scotland, okay, on the lives of people. Now, many of them are still asleep. Thousands are still asleep. Okay, they have not got up because the train has arrived, but the people are still asleep. They're dreaming of terrifying monsters, okay, or of friendly tea beside the band in the sing. So these are the kind of dreams that they are dreaming of. Asleep in working Glasgow, asleep in well said Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. Asleep in Granite, Aberdeen. This is yet another town. Okay, so Aberdeen, Edinburgh. Edinburgh nahi bolte, it's pronounced as Edinburgh. Okay, Edinburgh and Glasgow. So these are the different, and Beatock. So these are the 4 different towns which have been mentioned in Scotland in this poem. Please make a note of it again from an MCQ point of view. They continue their dreams but shall wake soon and hope for letters. So when they wake up, they will be in anticipation of the letters. They will long for the letters and hope for letters. In some places, instead of hope, you would find they have written long. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that in some editions, this is written as long. So both will be okay. Okay, I saw this in different editions, different words have been used. In some they have written as hope, in some they have written as long. And none will hear the postman's knock without a quickening of the heart. Now it means that as soon as the postman knocks on the house, it will be accompanied by a quickening of the heart. You see, there's a double negative here. And none without. There are double negatives. It means that when the postman's knock is heard, it will be accompanied by a quickening of the heart. Quickening of the heart means that, there will be excitement, when something, you're looking forward to something, so your heartbeat will kind of be faster. You will be more excited about receiving the mail, the post, right? So their hearts will be racing in anticipation of what they will get to read. For who can bear to feel himself forgotten? And this is an important line. So he says that for who can bear to, so the last line is how important the mail is, because who would want to feel forgotten? Because the mail is an indication. What does the mail indicate? What does the letter indicate? The letter indicates that someone out there in the country, in the world, is thinking about you, which is why they have written to you, right? So you are not a forgotten character. You are not a forgotten person. That is what is important. So out here, so the last line's importance is that. So the last passage is very important, that in these 2 lines, 1, it will be with excitement. Number 2, this is an indication that you're not a forgotten character. You're not isolated. You're not forgotten, and people want to stay connected with you by communicating with you. So the last stanza is about the impact on human lives in the country of Scotland. Okay, I hope this is clear. Poetic devices, I have explained quite a few while we are going through. Personification, snorting, shoveling, etc. Imagery, like jug in bedroom is an imagery. The silent miles of windswept grass is an imagery. Past cotton grass and moorland, that's an imagery, because you're able to imagine how he's kind of describing it, right? The metaphor, like the steady climb, the gradient is against her, because they are metaphors for the hurdles and the obstacles in life. Then the word yelping, which was used, I think, in the 3rd stanza. Yelping, onomatopoeia is basically to talk about how the sound is created, pretty much similar to how the sound is actually there, right? So yelping is that kind of a word. The word letters is used quite a lot of time. That's a repetition. And alliteration, shoveling, over her shoulder, sure sound. So those are some of the poetic devices which have been used. Generally, ICSE does not have a tendency to ask poetic devices. Okay. Even in MCQ format, at least I haven't seen it in any of the board exams so far, and I would assume the same for class 9 as well. So that's the end of this explanation video. I hope अच्छा लगा, मजा आया, and you look at the question and answers, look at the MCQs. The test papers, it will take some time to put, but the basic question and answers I have put in the notes. You can go through that, and that will help you. Things like what's the theme of the thing, what's the theme of the poem, what is the kind of journey that is undertaken by the night mail, all those question and answers I have put. Okay, tata, bye bye, namaskar, bye bye.